The Lagos sun hung low, casting a golden hue over Lekki Phase 1, where the rich slept in glass towers, untouched by the chaos of the city. Inside one such tower, the mansion of Chinedu Okafor, tech mogul and billionaire, silence reigned. The walls of his home gleamed with marble and steel, but his heart was another matter. Walled off, bruised by betrayals, lovers who left, and friends who turned into thieves. Chinedu stood by his expansive window, scotch in hand, watching the sunset drown behind the rooftops. Below, near the mansion's side gate, he noticed Amara Obasi, his maid, moving quickly, clutching 2 nylon bags. It wasn't the first time she left early, always with an excuse. Her sick mother in Nsukka, an errand, an appointment. But tonight, something tugged at Chinedu's gut. The way she glanced around before stepping out, the determined pace in her gait. She had always been discreet, quiet, almost invisible, yet she carried herself with dignity that was hard to ignore. His voice cut through the air. "Amara!" She stopped abruptly, her slim frame stiffening. She turned, her brown eyes wide, caught. "Where are you going this time?" he asked from the balcony, his tone casual but his eyes sharp. She hesitated, adjusting the bags in her hands. "To buy some things for my mother, sir. She's not well." Her voice was soft, respectful, yet it carried the tremble of someone used to being questioned, doubted. Chinedu's gaze lingered on her face, her eyes. There was something in them. Not fear, not guilt, something deeper. But he was a man forged in suspicion. Wealth had taught him that. Still, he nodded. "Be careful." She whispered a thank you and stepped out the gate, her footsteps fading into the noise of the evening. But Chinedu couldn't shake the feeling. The city had taught him to read people, and there was a story in her eyes, a story she carried like a secret flame. At midnight, the mansion, though grand, felt hollow. Chinedu poured himself another drink, but paused. He opened his laptop, pulled up Amara's employee record. Name, Amara Obasi. Age, 27. Origin, Nsukka, Enugu State. Hired 8 months ago. References, clean. Behavior, quiet. Hardworking, polite. But there were gaps. Early exits, days she requested off, weekends where she vanished without explanation. Chinedu leaned back, his mind racing. A receipt he once found in her coat pocket surfaced in memory. A bank transfer to someone in Enugu, a significant amount for a maid's salary. She had mumbled then about hospital bills, her mother. He wanted to believe her, but in a world where loyalty was a rare currency, belief was a luxury Chinedu couldn't afford, and yet curiosity won. The next day when Amara left, he waited 10 minutes before sliding into his black SUV. Emeka Ibe, his ever-loyal assistant, called just as he turned the ignition. "Boss, you good?" Chinedu stared at the gate where Amara had just exited. "Yeah, Emeka. I'm just following a spark." "A spark?" Emeka chuckled. "Only you sabi talk like that." But Chinedu wasn't smiling. "Let me call you back." As the car rolled quietly after the figure of the maid, Chinedu felt it, an inexplicable pull. He wasn't just following a maid, he was chasing a question. Who was Amara Obasi when the apron came off? In that moment, under the dim Lagos sky, he had no idea this pursuit would shatter his cynicism, teach him to feel again, and ultimately rewrite both their fates. Chinedu's SUV coasted along the busy arteries of Lagos, keeping a careful distance from the yellow Danfo bus that Amara boarded. His gaze stayed fixed on the flashing taillights ahead, his mind battling suspicion and curiosity. This wasn't a woman heading to the club or sneaking off to a hidden affair. Her posture was upright, her eyes pinned on the horizon like someone headed for war. Then the bus turned, navigating deeper into Ajegunle, a neighborhood Chinedu rarely visited. The air here was thick, with smoke from suya grills, the chaotic calls of hawkers, the grind of struggling lives. His luxury SUV was a ghost in this world. The bus stopped by a narrow road, and Amara disembarked, clutching her modest bag. She walked with purposeful steps past crumbling buildings, until she reached a small, peeling sign that read, Ncheta Skills Literacy Hub, Evening Classes, Food support. Chinedu's brows lifted. He parked discreetly and observed from a distance. Through the grimy glass windows, he watched Amara enter and, unexpectedly, walk straight to the front of a small, crowded classroom. Not to clean, not to wait, but to teach. He watched her pick up chalk and write, "Good evening, class," on the board. Adults, some elderly, some youthful but weathered, watched her attentively. Amara's voice was soft but clear, guiding them through basic English phrases. When she smiled, it was unlike anything he had seen in the quiet girl who scrubbed his marble floors. This was a woman alive, vibrant, rooted in purpose. Then she did something that cut deeper. She shared food she had brought from those nylon bags, bread, bottled water, fruit, all purchased with her meager salary. She knelt beside an old man struggling to pronounce hospital, guiding his tongue gently, laughing softly with him. Chinedu sat frozen in his car. Every suspicion, every doubt was now a shard of shame in his chest. "Who are you, Amara Obasi?" he muttered to himself. When the class ended, Amara packed quietly, her smile fading as she stepped back into the dark streets. She returned to the world where she was a maid, where her light had to be hidden. But Chinedu couldn't unsee it. He returned home that night not as the hunter of secrets, but as a man burdened by revelation. In his mansion, the silence was unbearable. The same walls, the same wealth, but suddenly all meaningless. He sat before his laptop, searching in Nsukka Skills Literacy Hub online. The web page was simple, poorly designed, riddled with blurry photos. Yet in every image, there she was, Amara, teaching, smiling, distributing bread, reading children's books to adults. Then he saw the plea on the site. "We run solely on donations. Volunteers contribute food and supplies from their personal funds. Our roof leaks. Our rent is overdue. Help us keep hope alive." Chinedu sat back, swallowing hard. His eyes burned, not from fatigue, but from something deeper. Guilt, respect, awe. The next morning, without hesitation, he called Amika Iba. "Find out everything about this Nsukka hub. Rent, debts, number of students. I want it all." Amika chuckled. "Planning to invest in a Ajegunle boss?" "Something like that." Hours later, Amika delivered the numbers. The hub was weeks away from eviction. The roof was caving. No sponsors. And the volunteers? Unpaid. Amara worked 3 jobs: maid, supermarket cashier, and volunteer teacher. Chinedu stared long at the report. This was no maid. This was a silent spark, burning quietly in a city too loud to notice. Without fanfare, he authorized a $5 million anonymous donation, not just to clear debts, but to rebuild. That night, Chinedu stood by his window again, but this time the lights of Lekki's skyline mocked him. All his life he had built apps, tech solutions, investments. But what had he built for people like Amara? In the glow of his quiet mansion, he whispered to himself, maybe it's not too late to learn from her. And in that moment, unknowingly, Chinedu's own education had begun. Not in boardrooms, but in the humility of a girl from Nsukka who refused to let her brilliance stay invisible. The morning light filtered softly through the tall glass walls of Chinedu Okafor's mansion. But the house felt different, alive with questions, heavy with new awareness. Chinedu found himself wandering into the kitchen, an unusual habit for a man used to summoning people. There she was, Amara Obasi, wiping down the counter with her usual quiet focus. She didn't expect to see him this early. She startled slightly but composed herself. "Good morning, sir," she said, her voice polite, distant. But today, Chinedu didn't nod and disappear. He took his coffee and sat at the kitchen island, watching her move gracefully, efficiently, as though this sterile kitchen was her domain. "Amara," he began, his voice softer than usual. "Sit with me for a moment." She froze. Maids didn't sit with their oga. She glanced at him, puzzled, but obeyed. Wiping her hands nervously, she sat on the edge of a dining chair, eyes downcast. "What do you do when you leave here at night?" Chinedu asked, his tone careful. Amara's breath caught. She looked up slowly, suspicion flickering in her eyes. I work part-time at a supermarket, and other things. Like teaching? She gasped softly. Her composure faltered. Chinedu smiled gently. I saw you, Amara. I followed you. Her hands trembled slightly. She braced herself for rebuke or dismissal. Instead, Chinedu continued. Why didn't you ever tell me? She swallowed, eyes moist but steady. Because it wasn't important here. I'm just a maid. Those words struck Chinedu like a slap. He had known brilliance, tech geniuses, business savants, but Amara, in her humility, was something rare. It matters to me now, he said quietly. Silence stretched between them, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was a fragile bridge being built. Then he noticed the scattered papers near her handbag, typed pages, scribbled notes. He reached forward gently. What are these? Amara tried to gather them hastily. It's nothing, sir. But Chinedu was already reading the title. Silent Sparks, Why Skilled Rural Nigerians Become Invisible in the City. He looked up, genuinely impressed. You're writing this? She nodded reluctantly. It's my thesis for my diploma at Lagos City College. I attend evening classes after volunteering. What is it about? He asked, genuinely curious. Her eyes brightened, her voice steady as she explained. It's about people from villages, tailors, farmers, midwives, who move to Lagos, but because they don't speak fluent English, because of their accents, they end up as cleaners, laborers. Their skills become invisible here. Her words stirred something deep within Chinedu. He thought of all the smart, underestimated people he had ignored in boardrooms and service roles. You've thought this through, he whispered. It's personal, she admitted. My friend Mama Chi was a trained midwife in Owerri, but here she cleans offices. Another man I know used to fix generators in Kogi, but now he pushes wheelbarrows at the market. Chinedu sat back, deeply moved. He had built apps that scaled to millions, yet here was a woman building dignity. One lesson, one meal, one word at a time. I run a foundation, he said suddenly. Golden Gate Foundation. It's small, focuses on education and youth development, but I want to expand it, and I want you to help lead it. Amara's eyes widened in disbelief. Me? Yes, as Community Outreach Director, full salary, resources, power to build real programs. She stared at him, heart pounding. This was everything she dreamed of, but also everything she feared. She had built herself from the ground up. Could she trust this lifeline? Sir, I need to think. Take your time, Amara, Chinedu said, his gaze unwavering. But I see you now. I want others to see you too. As she left the kitchen, papers pressed to her chest, Chinedu sat still, watching her disappear through the hallway. He felt it, a stirring he hadn't known in years. He wasn't just watching a maid. He was witnessing a spark. For days after that conversation in the kitchen, Amara Obasi moved through the mansion as though every step was a question, every chore a debate with herself. She cleaned the glass walls, swept the marble floors, folded the fine linens, but her mind remained elsewhere. Every time she passed Chinedu Okafor, she felt the weight of his gaze. Not the cold, dismissive glance of a rich man, but the watching eyes of someone who finally saw her. The file he had given her with the job offer sat untouched in her room. She'd open it, read the terms. Community Outreach Director, attractive salary, full benefits, the power to design programs that could reshape the lives of thousands like her students at Nsukka Skills Literacy Hub, and then close it again. She thought of her students in Ajegunle, Baba Chika, who struggled with the word hospital, Mama Chi, the midwife who mopped office floors, and the others who showed up every evening hungry for knowledge and bread. They were family, her chosen family. Would this new role mean abandoning them? Could she live with herself in air-conditioned meetings while the roof of the learning center still leaked? She hadn't answered Chinedu yet. She wasn't sure she could. The days grew colder between them, where once she felt his presence, a casual greeting, a shared cup of tea, now there was polite distance. Good morning, sir. "Morning, Amara." And that was it. Even Chinedu felt it, the shift. He lingered less in the kitchen, no longer timed his coffee breaks to her flower-arranging rituals. His house felt larger again, emptier, lonelier. One Friday afternoon, the ache became too much to carry. Amara stood outside Chinedu's study, her hand trembling as she knocked gently. When he looked up, his eyes met hers, and he knew. This wasn't just a visit. She stepped forward, an envelope in hand. "Sir, I'm giving my notice. 2 weeks." The words landed heavy, like thunder in a quiet room. Chinedu swallowed, his throat dry. "You're leaving?" She nodded, eyes downcast. "Yes, sir. I need to give more of myself to the center, and to myself." There was a pause. Neither moved. Neither wanted to. "Thank you for everything," she whispered. "For seeing me." Chinedu stared at her, his heart sinking. She was still here, yet he already felt her absence. "Whatever you do next, Amara," he said quietly, "I know you'll change lives." She gave a faint smile. "That means more than you know." For the next 2 weeks, the mansion became a house of ghosts. Chinedu watched her from afar, memorizing the way she hummed while watering the plants, how she wrapped her head in a scarf while cleaning. He wanted to tell her not to go, that he needed her, not just as a worker, but as a heartbeat in his hollow life. But he said nothing, because love, he thought, wasn't supposed to be a cage. On her final evening, Chinedu stood outside her door, a manila envelope in his hand. He knocked softly. She opened the door, surprised. "These are for you," he said, handing the envelope. "Recommendation letters. Glowing. Honest." She flipped through them, her eyes misting. They're beautifully written. Because they're true. She stared at the papers, her heart full, her lips trembling. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll keep in touch," he whispered. "I will." They stood, two people on opposite sides of a goodbye, in a mansion now colder than ever. 3 months passed. Chinedu buried himself in work, board meetings, new investments. But the house remained colder, emptier. Some mornings he still poured 2 cups of tea before remembering she wasn't coming. He told himself it was habit, but deep down he knew. It was absence. It was regret. Until one morning his assistant Emeka Ibe dropped an envelope on his desk. "Invitation came for you personally, sir. Looks fancy." Chinedu raised an eyebrow, opening the gold embossed card. "You are cordially invited to the Nsukka Skills Literacy Hub's annual gala fundraiser, honoring Amara Obasi as Volunteer of the Year." His heart skipped. "Should I RSVP no?" Emeka asked. Chinedu stared at the card for a long, heavy moment. "No," he said finally, his voice low but sure. "Tell them I'll be there." Because for the first time in months, he knew exactly where he needed to be. The Nsukka Skills Literacy Hub looked nothing like the fragile, crumbling center Chinedu once spied on. That night, under a canvas of string lights, with colorful cloth banners and paper flowers crafted by students, the hub glowed. The air was alive with languages: Igbo, Yoruba, Hausa, Pidgin, a choir of Nigeria's vibrant soul. Chinedu stepped out of his SUV, dressed sharply in a gray tailored suit, though he felt strangely exposed in the crowd of artisans, elders, and eager children. He kept his gaze searching, scanning the room until he saw her. Amara Obasi. She moved with ease, confidence draped around her like a shawl. No apron, no bags of groceries weighing her hands down. Instead, she carried purpose, greeting guests, guiding elders to their seats, directing children away from the fragile decorations. For a moment, Chinedu stood still, breath caught. She was home here, more alive than she ever was in his mansion. Then a voice crackled over the microphone. The MC called the room to attention. "Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we honor a woman whose dedication has transformed this place. Please welcome our Volunteer of the Year, Amara Obasi." The crowd erupted in applause. Amara, startled, smiled shyly and stepped into the small wooden stage. The light caught her face, soft and radiant. She accepted crystal plaque, then turned to the mic. Her voice, steady but tender, echoed through the hall. I never imagined standing here. There was a time I thought no one saw me, not as I truly am." She paused, eyes scanning the room, unknowingly catching a glimpse of Chinedu near the back, but her gaze moved on. "But someone did. An anonymous donor paid for my mother's surgery and saved this center from closing. They never gave their name, but they changed everything." Her voice cracked, emotions seeping through. "I don't know who you are, but if I ever meet you, I'll tell you this. You didn't just save my mother or this building. You saved me." The hall stood still, her words hanging heavy, tender. Across the room, Chinedu felt a knot in his throat. He swallowed hard, his eyes wet, his chest aching with the truth he hadn't told. The gala wound down with laughter, music, soft conversations. But Chinedu remained still until he saw Amara by the entrance, her award cradled in her arms, her smile tinged with sadness, as if even amidst celebration, something was missing. He stepped forward. She noticed him instantly. Their eyes locked. The air between them shifted, heavier, warmer. "Congratulations," Chinedu said quietly. "You deserve it." She smiled, but her lips trembled. "Thank you for coming." They stood in awkward stillness, the unsaid crowding the space between them, until Amara whispered, "There's something I've always wanted to say, but I didn't know who to say it to." Chinedu's voice was low. "What is it?" "That donor, the one who saved us. I wish I could thank them properly. I wish I could tell them they gave me back my life." Chinedu's heart thudded, loud and unrelenting. He inhaled deeply, then exhaled, his walls crumbling. "Amara, it was me." Her eyes blinked rapidly, confusion, disbelief clouding her expression. "What?" "I followed you that night. I thought you were hiding something, but instead, I found you teaching, giving, living." He stepped closer, his voice raw. "I paid for the surgery, the center's donation. That was me. I didn't want credit. I just wanted to help. Because seeing you that night, seeing who you really are, it changed me." Her eyes glistened, her breath shallow. "You did all that and never told me?" "I didn't want it to feel like charity. I wanted it to feel like love." Silence stretched, full but tender. She stared at him, searching his face for deceit, but found only honesty, truth, vulnerability. "I don't know how to feel," she whispered, clutching her award tightly. "I thought I built everything I have with my own two hands, and now it feels like someone was holding the ladder. Because I saw you climbing alone, and I couldn't just watch anymore," Chinedu said softly. She bit her lip, her heart caught between pride and gratitude, between distance and longing. "I've spent my life being rescued or used. I don't know how to accept help that's not a trap." "It's not a trap," Chinedu said, his voice steady. "It's love. It's admiration. It's me realizing my life is empty without you." Their breaths mingled in the night air, the music fading into a distant hum. For the first time since she walked away from his mansion, Amara smiled, not in shyness, but with the fragile beginnings of trust. "I don't know where this leads," she said quietly, "but I think I want to find out." Chinedu's smile was soft, patient. "Then let's figure it out together." And beneath the glow of fairy lights, among the community she built with her bare hands, Amara and Chinedu stood, two lives finally beginning to bridge the space between wealth and purpose, fear and hope, love and redemption. 3 weeks after the gala, Lagos was beginning to hum with the usual December tension, markets bursting with traders, the air heavy with the scent of harmattan dust and roasting maize. But in Lekki Phase 1, Chinedu wasn't thinking about business, deals, or his portfolio. His mind was fixed on a village in Nsukka, Enugu State, the home of the woman who had quietly changed his life. "I need to go to Nsukka," he told Emeka Ibe one morning. "I'm meeting her mother." Emeka, half shocked, half amused, chuckled. "Ah, Oga, you done finally follow." Chinedu smiled faintly. I think I've been falling for a while. I just didn't know it. The journey from Lagos to Nsukka was long, the roads winding, landscapes shifting from city skylines to red earth and lush greens. As his SUV bounced through the final stretch of rough road, Chinedu's heart pounded, not from the trip, but from anticipation. Finally, they arrived. The Obasi compound stood modestly, a few bungalows surrounded by mango trees, chickens darting here and there. On the veranda sat Mama Obasi, her frame fragile but her eyes sharp, her wrapper tied with elegance. Amara stood by her side, smiling nervously. Chinedu stepped out, dressed simply in a white senator attire, clutching a basket of fruits and provisions. He greeted the elders gathered around. Good afternoon, Ma. I am Chinedu Okafor. I've come to see Mama Obasi. The old woman eyed him critically. You are the one my daughter talks about? Yes, Ma. And you want to take my daughter's heart, huh? Chinedu swallowed hard but nodded with humility. I don't want to take it, Mama. I want to earn it. The elders chuckled. The old woman raised an eyebrow, impressed but still wary. You know she is not your house girl here. In Nsukka, she is the daughter of pride. Yes, Mama, he answered sincerely. That's why I'm here, to ask, not to command. Mama Obasi stared at him for a while, then chuckled softly. At least you brought fruit. You have small sense. The afternoon passed with stories and questions. Chinedu, despite his wealth, sat on plastic chairs, drank palm wine, and listened to family history. He struggled with the language, his attempts at Igbo phrases earning both laughter and warmth. Later, as the sun began to set, Mama Obasi pulled Amara aside. Are you sure? Amara smiled softly. He sees me, Mama. Not just my hands, my heart. The old woman sighed, her eyes misting. Then let your heart guide you. Just don't lose who you are. That night, under the village sky dusted with stars, Chinedu and Amara sat outside, the air cool and still. I was afraid, Amara admitted, staring into the night. Afraid that if I let you help me, I'd lose the part of me I fought so hard to protect. Chinedu took her hand gently. Then we build a life where you never have to choose between love and purpose. She looked at him, tears brimming. I want to. I'm just afraid. So am I, he whispered. But maybe we can be afraid together. Amara chuckled softly, the sound like a quiet bell in the night. What are you really offering me, Chinedu? He smiled, a soft certainty in his eyes. A partnership, a mission, a life where we fight for others, together. And for the first time, Amara didn't pull away. She leaned into his shoulder, letting the safety of his promise wrap around her. When they returned to Lagos, plans began, not for a traditional proposal with diamonds and champagne, but for something deeper, a wedding not of wealth, but of purpose. They chose the only place that felt right, the Nsukka Skills Literacy Hub, rebuilt, vibrant, alive, the place where their story began. And beneath the bright murals painted by students, the two who once stood on opposite sides of power and poverty, prepared to stand side by side, not just as lovers, but as partners in purpose. The morning of the wedding arrived, not with extravagance or opulence, but with the vibrant hum of community. The Nsukka Skills Literacy Hub in Ajegunle was unrecognizable from its former crumbling self. The walls, once peeling and gray, now gleamed in soft white, adorned with murals painted by the students themselves, images of books, hands joined in unity, alphabets and bright suns rising over fields. In place of chandeliers and red carpets, strings of fairy lights and colorful Ankara fabrics fluttered gently in the breeze. Paper flowers, crafted by eager hands, lined the simple wooden platform that served as the altar. A borrowed keyboard hummed with soft gospel tunes, and laughter echoed in every corner of the space. The guests were a mosaic of worlds. There were men in tailored suits, executives from Chinedu's tech empire, their polished shoes slightly dusty from the Ajegunle soil. Market women, literacy students, and neighborhood children mingled freely with Lagos elites, their colorful wrappers and headscarves turning the place into a carnival of colors. Even Mama Chi, the midwife turned office cleaner, arrived with a cooler of chilled zobo and malt drinks. At the back of the hall, Amara Obasi stood, wrapped in a simple but elegant lace dress passed down from her grandmother, a soft shade of yellow that kissed her rich brown skin. Her hair was adorned with delicate beads, and a veil, gently adjusted by Mama Obasi, framed her glowing face. "Thank you for not giving up on me, Mama," Amara whispered, her eyes shimmering. Her mother's voice was steady, though thick with emotion. "How could I, WAM? You are the light that refused to be hidden." When the music swelled, Amara began her walk down the makeshift aisle. Every eye followed her. Market women smiled knowingly, students clapped softly, and elders nodded with pride. At the front, in a crisp black suit, Chinedu Okafor stood, his heart pounding not from nerves, but from awe. The man who once lived behind glass walls of distrust now stood vulnerable, waiting for a woman who had taught him how to feel again. Their eyes locked, and in that gaze, the past, the loneliness, the suspicion, the distance, fell away. Only possibility remained. The officiant, an elderly woman from the community, cleared her throat. "This is not a wedding of riches. It is a wedding of vision. A union of two hearts determined to build, not just a family, but a future for many." When it was time for vows, Chinedu spoke first, his voice unwavering. "Amara, you taught me that the most brilliant lights often burn in silence. That dignity doesn't wear suits or live in mansions. It lives in people who refuse to let life steal their purpose. I stand here not to offer you wealth, but partnership, to build with you, to serve with you, to love you endlessly." Amara's lips trembled as she began. "Chinedu, I used to believe I was invisible, just another girl sweeping floors, carrying secrets. But you saw me, and because you saw me, I'm standing taller. I vow to never forget who I am, where I come from, and to build with you a life that gives others that same dignity." Tears shone openly in the eyes of many. Even Chinedu's assistant, Emeka Ibe, was seen dabbing his face. When they kissed, the hall erupted, not with polite applause, but with ululations, claps, and Igbo chants that shook the walls with joy. Afterward, children ran around with signs that read, "Congratulations, Auntie Amara and Uncle Chinedu." Food was shared freely. Jollof rice, moi, fried plantain, suya, and akara. A local DJ blended gospel with Afro beats, and soon, even the stiffest executives found themselves dancing with market women. At one point, Chinedu stood with Amara, watching the crowd, his hand gently resting on hers. "We built this," he whispered. She smiled, resting her head on his shoulder. "And we're just getting started." As night fell, the Nsukka Skills Literacy Hub glowed not just with lights, but with the promise of a future, one where no skill remained unseen, no person felt invisible, and love was the foundation upon which dignity was rebuilt. 3 months had passed since the simple but unforgettable wedding at the Nsukka Skills Literacy Hub. Life, however, didn't return to normal, because there was no going back to normal for Chinedu Okafor and Amara Obasi. Together they had forged a new normal, one driven by love, service, and a vision to uplift. Their home in Lekki Phase 1 transformed too. No longer a cold mansion of glass and marble, it became a lively space where students, volunteers, and even community leaders from Ajegunle visited. The scent of freshly cooked ofensala often replaced the sterile aroma of polished floors. Laughter echoed through halls that once held only Chinedu's solitary footsteps. Every morning Amara woke early, not to clean, but to plan. She worked alongside Chinedu at the Golden Gate Foundation, where she officially served as the Director of Community Impact. But her real work began in the neighborhoods, often ignored by the city's powerful. Together, they launched the Silent Sparks Initiative, a program designed to identify, train, and empower skilled workers from rural and underserved communities across Nigeria. Tailors in Kano, mechanics in Benin, midwives in Owerri, all given platforms to showcase their brilliance, learn new languages, understand markets, and regain dignity. The Nsukka Hub expanded too, with new wings dedicated to digital literacy, vocational training, and even a children's library named Mama Obasi Children's Corner, a tribute to the woman whose strength shaped Amara. But for all their outward success, their greatest victories were personal. One cool evening, they sat on the balcony of their home, the Lekki skyline twinkling in the distance, a contrast to the humble homes they often visited. Chinedu looked at Amara, who was scribbling in her notebook, always planning the next outreach, the next community to uplift. "You never stop, do you?" he asked, amused. She smiled, her eyes bright. "Purpose doesn't pause." He watched her, pride swelling in his chest. Then he reached out, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "Do you know what amazes me most about you?" "What?" "That with everything we've built, I still see that same girl who carried nylon bags of bread for strangers. And I pray I never stop seeing her." Amara's eyes softened. She leaned in, resting her forehead against his. "And I still see the man who followed his maid on a bus, because he couldn't ignore a spark." They chuckled quietly, the intimacy between them deeper than touch, rooted in shared mission. Suddenly, Amara remembered something. She rose and retrieved a framed document from the study. She placed it gently in his hands. It was her completed thesis, Silent Sparks, Reclaiming the Invisible Brilliance of Rural Nigeria. "I dedicated it to you," she said softly, "for seeing me." Chinedu read the dedication aloud. "To Chinedu, who taught me that love is not a distraction from purpose, but its greatest partner." Tears stung his eyes, but he didn't blink them away. "Thank you for choosing me, Amara. We chose each other." Months later, they stood together at the opening of a new Nsukka hub branch in Port Harcourt, their hands clasped, watching as former cleaners, traders, and artisans stepped onto new paths of opportunity. A journalist asked, "Mr. Okafor, what changed you from a reclusive billionaire to a man of the people?" Chinedu smiled and glanced at Amara. "I met someone who taught me that wealth means nothing if your heart stays poor." And as cameras flashed and applause echoed, Chinedu and Amara stood side by side, not just as husband and wife, but as partners in purpose, proof that when love meets vision, two sparks can ignite a nation.